Awareness for the panelists and folks online is that the camera inside is not working, so you can't see us, but we should be able to see you. Staff will be monitoring the Zoom if you raise your hand through the process. But with that, Mr. Chair, you're welcome to start your meeting.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. 11:07, May 4th. Let's start with the roll call.
Thank you. Member Kinney?
Here.
Member Harris?
Who's online?
I believe she's moving over to a panel as she's president. Member Oliverio? Here. Member Van Houten?
Here.
Member Pawnee?
Here.
Vice Chair Robertson?
Here.
Member Klein, Chair Klein?
Here.
And members Taylor and Stitzer are absent today with pre-notification. Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Let's move into public comment. Do we have any public comment in the room?
We have none registered with us.
Do we have any public comment online?
Art Rangel has raised his hand.
Arthur, please go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Art Rangel for the record. I want to speak to item B3 on today's agenda. The development of the Reno Experience District illustrates what a real catalyst redevelopment project encompasses. The RED has taken vacant properties, generated almost no tax increment, and developed that property with high floor to area ratio, 5-story buildings, which have generated not only tax increment, but sales tax and bed tax as well. I applaud them for being a major reason that Project Area 2 has generated a significant amount of tax increment. Having said that, I also applaud Ashley and Brian for again hiring a highly qualified consultant firm in BF Friedman to do the gap analysis, just like they did in Hiron Hudson Partners for the GSR Arena gap analysis, another true high catalyst project. If the but-for test of the pro forma shows no need to provide tax increment assistance, then the request for the TIF should be denied. The developers of the RED have demonstrated they build quality projects, and the RED is a big asset to our community in many ways. I encourage Line Living to look at developing other like projects, including Class A office buildings within redevelopment project area number 1. Redevelopment project area 1 does not expire for another 17 years in 2043. There are a lot of vacant and underutilized parcels in project area 1, many already cleared and assembled, but improved with only surface parking lots or minimum improvements. Please consider these properties to build another project like you did in the RED. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Do we have any other public comment online? Okay, seeing none, we will move into approval of the agenda. We may take some stuff out of order here to get to our possible action items first, and then move some of our discussion items to the back in case anybody needs to leave. And then we have some folks in the room there present. Is everybody good with that? So I'm thinking we'll go specifically to our business items. We'll go B2. What's that? B2, B3, B5, B4, B6. Okay.
What about B1?
Oh, yeah, B1 to start B1. Yes, of course.
I move to approve the agenda for May 4th, 2026.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Second by Member Palmy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda's approved. We do have some minutes to review from the April 6th meeting. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes unless anybody has any changes or issues. So
Nettie Oliveria, second.
second by Nettie. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Council liaison report. We'll move through that over to staff liaison report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. Brian McCardle is out today. He is currently at the ULI conference in Nashville. So you get me, second fiddle. We'll do the best we can. We have quite a robust agenda. Your chair has been working closely with staff to try to ensure that these meetings are concise and that we are getting action items handled first. We will continue to bring forward the items that the board has recommended and requested, as well as action items. They're robust, so if you have changes along the way, please make sure that you're reaching out to the chair and I as well. Next thing to note, I did want to welcome Marlene Chavez to the team. You'll see her over helping learn some of the ranks. She is our newly hired program assistant with the Redevelopment Agency. We stole her from the Parks Department. So she has a lot of administrative background and understanding on how the city works. So she will be supporting the Redevelopment Agency in helping some of these things function a little bit smoother on our end. So we're excited to be staffed up. Last thing that I would like to note is I don't need a decision today because we're not agendized for action, but general feedback would be helpful today and next month. You previously approved your year schedule, and we have the July meeting is scheduled for Monday, July 6th. We had talked about when we approved the schedule that we would talk about it getting closer to if the board wanted to either cancel that meeting or move that meeting to another date. And so we would be looking for feedback from the group on who's around and what that looks like coming back from the holiday weekend. I would say 3 options are keep it as is. Second option is move it a week out. Third option is cancel in no particular order.
What do y'all think?
I would say move it a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we will plan to bump out that meeting 1 week so that way it gives everybody a little bit more time.
Yeah, I
great.
think that's good.
Awesome. With that, Mr. Chair, I have no further liaison updates that are necessary at this time.
Okay. Moving into our business items, there was some updates that were described in our packet. If you have any questions or comments regarding that, Ms. Tournier would be happy to address that.
Yes, item B1 are the monthly updates that we provide to you in your packet. It includes status of all tip applications, all restore applications, all activations, special events, and other program details. Those are included on a monthly basis. If there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer. If there's nothing specific, one thing I can note is that we have received every awardee for this round of restore has submitted their building permits. So that is a big, monumental, exciting thing to note is that everyone has permits in. So we should start seeing some progress on those restore applications coming up soon. A few of them have actually finished. Senor Tequilas has just completed their outdoor seating. And so we are going through our process to sign off on that shortly. So
Do we need to go there and try it out?
you should definitely go and examine those improvements firsthand as the RAB board that made recommendations on that program.
Okay.
So we will continue to update you on those. But if there's not specific updates, Mr. Chair, then I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, very good. Okay, moving into B2, discussion and potential direction on redevelopment agency advisory board's role, structure, and relationship to the agency, the board. You guys may recall several meetings, a city manager, staff, regarding how we can provide the most value to the community and really the RDA. So a bunch of stuff's been thrown out. There's a presentation and some kind of best practices of what other cities are using to make sure that their redevelopment is most valuable to the community. So if there is a little presentation or something to go through, appreciate it. But what I'm looking for really is just kind of feedback from you all so that I can provide that feedback to the RDA and they can kind of start thinking about different options. So
Mr. Chair, Ashley Turney, Assistant City Manager for the record. From a staff presentation, we have very little to present to you today as this was a board requested item. You'll note the backup information in your packet identified a dozen or more various cities across the country that we looked at makeup and programs and tools. These are a lot of the RDAs that we reference for best practices and how we've formulated nearly every single one of our programs that we've brought forward to this board for your review. They are mixed across the board. One unique thing that we did find, though, is Reno is the only group that has an official advisory board. These other cities do not. They do have some ad hoc boards that are comprised of either development standards or design standards along the way. But we are unique in that regard. So with that, again, this was included in your backup. This was, as you mentioned, you're looking for your board's direction. So staff has no recommendation. We'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I'm just looking to open it up real quick. Initial thoughts on this. Some word, please, Colin, yeah. Let's have a start.
Robertson for the record. I appreciate this item on the agenda, and I think it's an important part of the conversation. I feel largely that this advisory board is very skilled and group of people with some really valuable experience and knowledge that is something that could perhaps be better utilized by the agency. And I think it's worth having a kind of advisory board level conversation about how that could look, basically. And to have perhaps a workshop as a board that is separate from our regular meeting, but allows us to workshop some various different ideas to propose to the DA about how we might be better utilized as a board itself rather than merely advisory.
Great. There's some other thoughts.
Mike Van Houten for the record. I definitely echo Colin's sentiments. I think that you have an advisory board that's full of experts in that development world to one extent or the other. And it's pretty all encompassing, the different areas of experience and levels of experience that we have. And I feel like to get things done quickly, sometimes it seems like a real pain to have us hear it first and then go to the RDA board and then sometimes go back to us again. And I did a lot of research on these other agencies across the country. And I don't know if Ashley could provide any input on the research as well, but it seems like the most effective boards are the ones that are separate, acting from the city councils themselves. At least in the case of Denver's and Boise. I know that that's just a really high level overview thought, but I think if that board was either separated or we took on some of the ability or financial making ability of the redevelopment board, it would make everything a lot less politicized, I think, at the RDA board level. And I'm not going to name any names, but I watch every single council meeting when our items go before them. And I would also add on that it seems quite often the city council has trouble taking off their city council hats and putting on their RDA hats, especially when it comes to items about budgets. When you hear them say things like, well, Reno doesn't have the budget for this or that, and they're clearly talking about RDA items or that would be RDA items, but they refer to them as like City of Reno General Fund items. That is kind of like an issue for me. And the other thing I question is if they're really listening to us or not. Because I don't talk to any of them, so I don't really know, but it just seems like a lot of the feedback we provide, if you actually watch their meetings, gets kind of lost in the weeds. And that's not Ashley's fault. She clearly says what we talk about in our meetings when she brings the item up, but it definitely seems like they will go off on a completely different tangent. So this is kind of my thoughts on the functioning of it.
Very good. Anyone else?
I think I'll be a little more blunt, which they would like to say. I think that they need to listen to us as a board, as a diverse background of everyone who sits on this board. And I don't think they listen. I think they need to get out of our way and allow us to do what we want to do as a RAB board meeting. Obviously, they're the final oversight, but I don't think that they're listening.
So, but is anybody here opposed to the idea of recommending this board have more powers or authorities?
No.
Is a so
I think it would
consistent-
depend- for me, it would depend on what those powers are.
yeah, but I'm saying, but
I hear what everyone's saying and I agree, and having appeared in front of council, I get the pain of the political decisions rather than the evidence-based decisions. I have some hesitation of a non-elected person having power over public funds. I'm not answerable to any constituent in terms of the ultimate spend. But I don't disagree. They put us together for a reason, but it doesn't feel like they're really listening to the expertise or taking it to the serious degree that they should.
so we could at least all agree that our current role needs to be improved. Like the current status quo is something that we should address, that we can provide more value. There's nobody in here that says we like exactly how this is going in an advisory feedback level only. Everybody can agree that there's more we can do.
Well, so Nettie Oliverio, if we were appointed to provide plausible deniability for the council wearing their RDA hat, then, that's what we're doing. But if we really want to elevate to the next level, it cannot be just that.
Mhm.
It has to be that we have decision-making power that really has some power behind it, as opposed to the plausible deniability aspect.
Colin Robertson, for the record, I share that feeling. I think that my interest is there's a great deal of inefficiency going back and forth between the RAB and the RDA and then back to the RAB that could be alleviated. There's a great deal of transparency that could be improved by kind of creating more efficiency, frankly. And I think, to be fair, this board got re-established, the advisory board got re-established in a kind of rapid succession kind of way. And so I think we're doing a little bit of building and sailing simultaneously the ship. So from my point of view, it would be beneficial for us as a group to establish, having been reestablished as a board, it would benefit the city and the RDA both, as well as our residents and taxpayers, to have us be able to articulate what we wish and need for that to be better.
Mike Benham, for the record, do you know how the Boise, the boards that are separate from the council, how they are put on or elected roughly?
So it depends on each state, actually Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record, it depends on each state and each jurisdiction based off of their state law. So Boise is entirely separate and it's that way based off of the law. Some cities you'll find in the research, it's a mayor appointment with council ratification. There are in Nevada, all of our redevelopment agencies are the city council sitting as the redevelopment agency. So it really comes down to the state law or the governance docs of creation.
But in the RNRS statute, it says pretty clearly that the RDA board, the city council makes up the RDA board, or the city council creates the RDA board, but it really can be anyone they want to appoint. For what I read, it was basically a combination of elected officials and, I guess called private citizens or whatever you call them, us. And then it could just be entirely them, or it can be entirely a board of private, sector type citizens. And so I think that the board could also, to Michael Pine's point, be kind of half and half, where maybe the mayor and the Ward 1 representative still sits on it, so it's partially elected and partially appointed. And so it doesn't have to be completely either or either. Because it would be great to see some more participation from the IDR board in our meetings. There's definitely a vacancy there, or like they're not, I don't know if they watch afterwards, but I think I've seen Kathleen Taylor attend one of our meetings and the mayor like attend 2 of our meetings. So I feel like I don't know if they watch them after the fact or if they just completely rely on Ashley to include what we say in the staff reports, but I think it'd be also more effective having a combination of them. If we do, recommend to them that it should separate completely. And in a private conversation I had with Brian, he mentioned the most effective boards across the country are the ones that he sees are separate. Because I think when you're an elected official and you're on the RDA board, you are beholden, I think, to things outside of the sphere of influence of what you're deciding on, whether that's donors, campaign contributions, things like that, that an appointed RDA board member would not be subjected to. This is more arguments for having a hybrid board, keeping it separate, or giving us more power. And if we wanted more power, what would that look like? Do we approve tip applications to move on to the gap analysis without them having to look at it? That's something we should think about. If we want to say we want to have more authority, what would that look like? Besides just advising them.
I was gonna say one of the areas that I think is lacking is there's not a lot of policy, and so a lot of these questions that come before us, there might be one today. It's like I'm looking for the policy direction from on high to know how to act on this. But maybe one of the things we could do is take the lead on developing some of those policies, whether, as a recommendation for them for adoption or not, but at least we're on the ground seeing things that we could use some clarity on, whether it's a priority, or definitional, how you implement these projects. And that might be one thing that we could take more active role.
Paul Robinson for the record. I think that's why all of those reasons are why a workshop focused on that would be useful.
I think you're right. So this is an action item. If there's appetite, make a motion to direct staff to find a time we can have a workshop specifically to this issue, and then and nothing else, and we'll take good public comment during that time and really come out with that with a recommendation, maybe some policy recommendations. If that's a motion that you want to call.
I will make that motion to ask staff to find a time in our schedules, which will be a trick, to convene this group for a workshop to explore those options, with trying to do that as soon as we can, but maintain some urgency and momentum to discuss it.
Motion on the table.
Nettie Oliveria, second.
Seconded by Nitty.
One question, could we add to that staff also do some research on legal parameters? To what extent could a non-elected person have power over whether it's spending money, et cetera?
Amendment accepted.
Amendment seconded.
Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to that? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
The attorney has her hand up. Would you
Okay.
like to call Lori Robinson?
Ms. Robinson, if you had a comment, we'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I would just like to suggest that we revise that as the advisory board isn't directing staff. They make recommendations to the board. So, staff can either pick that up and make the determination of, how much legal work to request, or you can include that as part of your resolution that you request for the agency board to have staff, have the attorney do the research.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Could we make this an item for a future agenda?
Yes, that's the answer.
Okay,
I'm comfortable. I believe I understand the future requested item. And so staff has noted that. So with that, I believe we don't need actual formal action based off of Rory's recommendation and the suggestion. So we will take it and
We'll make it.
We'll retract all of that.
correct. We understand what you would like to see and we will take that under advisement, and then you will maybe see a special meeting magically show up on your calendars.
Perfect.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to, let's close that item, move on into B3. This is a TIF application for the Red Retail Building Project with Lion Living for possible recommendation of the RAB.
All right, Mr. Chair, Ashley Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record, while staff is pulling up information for us today. Wanted to note that we do have SB Friedman, which was the third-party consultant that the agency has retained for particular TIF applications. They are online to be able to answer any questions that this board will have. My suggested recommendation of flow today is we'll open for public comment if there is any. I'll go through staff's brief presentation. As I mentioned, consultants available for questions. And then the applicant's representative is with us today, and he has mentioned that he would like to present some things to the board as well. That's your choice if you'd like to take that prior to discussion and taking your recommendation for today.
Okay, well, let's see. Is there any public comment specific to B3 in room or online? Okay. So let's go with that order.
Okay, we will transition to staff presentation now.
Okay.
Can you pull that up for me? That's a little finicky today, so thanks for your patience. All right, thank you. Item in front of you today is the evaluation of the tax increment finance application for the Redevelopment build out. As a reminder, the purpose of this today is to review the application, the reviewing of the independent but-for analysis done by SB Friedman. Your job is to determine whether the project meets statutory requirements, and then we're asking for a recommendation to take to the agency board, tentatively scheduled for May 20th this month. What's before you is the RAB is not approving the funding. The request for you today is to determine if this creates a project area benefit and if the project meets the but-for test and making the recommendation. Your options include, but are not limited to, approval, denial, forward without a recommendation, or continue for more information. I don't know how. Can you skip the next one for me?
Arrow button.
There we go. Tech will come back eventually. As a brief reminder to the board, the Reno Experience District is located in Ward 2. The original project scope was 63,000 square feet of retail build out, a new ground up retail building called Outpost. This was a $31 million cost, and the expected phased up leasing anticipated from 26 through 28. Slide. As I mentioned, RDA 2, we're familiar, on the corner of Virginia and Plum. Originally, this was part of a larger catalyst project request with future residential phases. In September of 2025, the residential phases were paused and removed from the application per the applicant's email and request to us. This shifted the application to focus on the existing buildings of Atwood Emery and the Element Hotel. This was the retail shell build out and then a new retail building. The but-for analysis was limited to the retail build out only, again, per the applicant's request submitted to SB Friedman. The estimated total tax increment financing, the increment that will come in generation through 2035, which is the current end of RDA 2, is estimated at about $836,000 in increment. This limited increment generation is due to the buildings are already constructed. The valuation is already accounted for on the tax roll based off of those areas being built out. The property has been fully assessed with downward adjustments due to vacancy and a lack of finish per the Washoe County Assessor's Office. Once these are improved and filled, the tax adjustment will be removed. This is what we often call obsolescence, has been taken into consideration, and in conversation with the Assessor's Office, the improvements will just remove the obsolescence. So it will not be considered new increment. It will just be recovered increment. Under NRS 279-486, whenever the agency is expending public resources, there are two required findings that are necessary to be made. The first is that the project benefits the redevelopment area. The second is that there are no other reasonable means of financing available. Per SB Friedman financial findings, so that the yield on cost is 9.8%. This is listed as above market benchmark of 7 to 8%. And the leveraged internal rate of return is at 13.9%. This is slightly below a 15% market benchmark. The conclusion based off of the information that staff has at this point is the project appears capable of achieving market level returns without public assistance. With that, we are turning it over to you for discussion. As I mentioned, SB Friedman, Lance Dorn is a principal analyst with SB Friedman. He is available online to answer any specific questions you as the board may have. And the applicant's representative, Garrett Gordon, is in the room and has some things to discuss if you would like a presentation from him.
Yes, okay, so let's hear from the applicant.
Great. If you hand up, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right. There's a total of 3, 1, 2, 3, it should be 9 for everyone at the table. I'll just pause for a second. So Storm Chestnut paper wall.
Thanks. Everybody have packets?
Great, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Usually I'm standing in front of the podium, so sorry for sitting today, but I think this is where I'm supposed to be. So for the record, Garrett Gordon representing Lion Living. First of all, thank you for your service, great discussion a minute ago with all you're doing for this community, so really appreciate it. So my request today is not for any dollars, not to dispute the report that Ms. Kearney just described, but a process question. And the process question is, rather than analyzing the retail on its own, you should also be analyzing the building in which the retail is located. And that was always our understanding. And let me go through why. So number one, when we received this report, and I'm looking at the SB Friedman report, page 3, it says, given the construction of the upper story or primary uses of the Emery and Atwood multifamily residential buildings and the Element Hotel have been financed and are complete, the agency is unable to consider the performance of those components as part of the but-for test. Let me just say on behalf of Lion, they were shocked with this analysis. I came before you in March 2025, and I'm going to walk through a few steps here, that we absolutely were negotiating and providing information to SB Friedman to include the buildings where the retail is located. But let me first say, maybe we were confused in this analysis, so let's just walk through it quickly so you kind of understand our confusion of why that sentence was included. And hopefully today, my request respectfully would be directing SV Friedman to analyze the buildings that the retail is located in, which they currently have that information. So number one, with respect to, well, is this a legal question? Can the existing structure be analyzed in the but-for test? And the answer is absolutely. A redevelopment law here references existing structures. So it's not a legal question. So number two, it's maybe we were confused in regards to the Catalyst project application. I have it here. And when we filled it out, it references destination retail in dense mixed-use housing developments. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're trying to bring some retail, some activation to some existing hotel and apartment uses. Then it says there's kind of two criteria for a catalyst project, which again, this body designated this project as a catalyst project in March of 2025. The first one is agency will only consider a catalyst project if it's over 50 million. You just heard in Ms. Turney's slide, this retail build out is not over 50 million. So the intent was always to include the entire project as a whole when you're analyzing this as a catalyst project. Otherwise, the retail build out standalone wouldn't qualify as a catalyst because it's under 50 million. But maybe there's a question of, well, you can't really analyze the project as a whole or the area as a whole. Well, number two, what's really cool about catalyst projects, it says the program offers area-wide financing, which means that the agency will draw upon the agency's tax increment revenues generated across the entire redevelopment area. So the fact that we're a redevelopment project, not only can we capture tax increment with all of TIF, with all of the catalyst project, with all of RED, but we could also pull from other projects in the area, which we're not asking to do, but I'm just showing that the scope of this has always been broad for a catalyst project. With redevelopment law, with the application as submitted. And then when I showed up in front of all of you and made the request for one, a catalyst project, and two, coming in project by project. So before you, you have two handouts from my presentation back in 2025. So you can see I clearly referenced Emory, Atwood, Element, and the new retail. Absolutely, we thought and proposed to all of you, this is a catalyst project. You don't just look at the 3 or 4 retail components in the building. You have to look at the building as a whole when analyzing the but-for test. Then if you look at the second, and this might be the most important piece of paper I handed you, which I described the catalyst project, I've highlighted it for you. On the bottom, it says, conduct due diligence on TIF from previously built RED buildings. And I remember this discussion here, we kind of talked about, well, can you pull TIF from buckets of existing development? Well, that's a question for another day. We first have to analyze it. So if you see again, when I presented before you, I was duly noted that conduct TIF on all RED buildings previously built. And if you turn over that page, it says next steps, advancing the application, and this body made a motion to review the gap financing and the fiscal impact of all those TIF projections in all of the existing buildings. So again, the request was always, and please include the analysis. Again, I'm not asking for any money today. You may get that analysis and say, sorry, we don't think you meet but-for, or for whatever reason, sorry, we're not going to provide any TIF, but at least we should analyze it. And finally, I handed you a big stack of emails. This is one of probably, I don't know, Line Living's on the call, dozens, if not hundreds of emails between us and SV Friedman. But maybe there was confusion with SV Friedman that they didn't get the information. So if you turn to page 6 of that email chain, this is from our client, Lion Living, Mark Whiting, to SV Friedman. Attached, please attach, find our submittal, to reflect the operation of the existing apartment buildings, Atwood and Emory, and existing hotel Element, along with the build out of the unoccupied retail. Then you go down, both apartment buildings today do not fully cover expenses and debt service. We are working towards positive cash flow in the next few years. This approach when you're analyzing existing apartment building, hotel improvements, as well as the vacant retail. This approach increases the viability of the three projects at large. Again, the three big projects and the catalyst project, but more importantly, will increase the viability of raising equity needed to complete the build out of the vacant retail spaces. So again, it was our understanding, and we're submitting information to SB Friedman of the three buildings where the retail is located. If you turn the page to page 5, again, of course, later emails are in the back and get closer to the front of earlier emails. SB Friedman doesn't say, whoa, we're not reviewing the existing buildings, or whoa, we're only reviewing the retail build out. No, they ask us for an incredible amount of information. Lion Living's on the call. They spent a lot of time and money and effort to come up with, you can see here, backup information, such as this from SB Friedman to Lion, backup information such as financial reports to support the hard-coded assumptions associated with the existing operations of each project component. And that was in October of 2025. And since then, for the last 8 months, we've been going back and forth with SB Friedman on this data, on the financials from the base of the acquisition prices to the existing leases to the financial numbers related to each of these buildings, to the performance of each of these buildings and how the retail would in fact fit in. So kind of back to where we are. Absolutely, the law allows this. Absolutely, the catalyst application itself contemplates this. Absolutely, my presentation to all of you, and I would respectfully say the motion you made was to analyze this as a whole. The presentation I made, including all those slides, the emails going back and forth for months, if not a year, contemplated financials of all these elements. Again, if you did make a motion to continue this item to gather more information, SB Friedman has it all. Like, they have all the data. They could turn this around very quickly. And again, I'm not asking you to make a motion of what you're going to do with that data, but this body, I think, should be allowed to have it and review it when moving this project forward. So in conclusion, I would say, you heard from Mr. Rangel, this has been a catalyst project to this area. I mean, it's on the corner of Plum Lane and Virginia Street. When we have guests coming in from the airport, this is one of the first projects they've seen. I can submit to you, Lion's already invested over $400 million into this project and is paying upwards of $2 million a year in property tax. So it's awesome. RDA is now in the black. They're flush. They have a lot of new, shiny, amazing projects out there. But we can't forget how we got there. We can't forget that Red took and they've been at the table from day one on TIF for years, waiting for this program to come together. So I'm respectfully asking, again, just a process question, just to get you the full picture, that you ask SB Friedman to take the data they already have, update the report with the financials of the three buildings that the retail is going into. I would love the opportunity to have a conversation with all that information at a future meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And Lion Living, specifically Mark Whiting, who had been going back and forth with Lance Dorn for months, if not a year now, is happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time today.
Thank you. Any questions for Garrett? Or we could, if anybody online, Lance, anybody from SB Friedman wants to present as well, feel free to do so.
Sure, I'm happy to answer any specific questions or just briefly provide some remarks. But thank you for having me here this morning. My name is Lance Dorn. I'm a partner with SB Friedman. We are a real estate economics and development finance agency that has been working with the RDA since February of last year in underwriting requests for public assistance. I just want to clarify that we did understand that the developer's request for assistance included the economics of the upper story developments, but through discussions internally and with the RDA staff, we determined that the upper story space did not meet the but-for argument, given that those components were fully funded and complete, which is why we focused exclusively on the retail components. As you heard through the summary of our analysis, the retail is achieving on its own what we found to be market rates of return, and therefore any assistance that would be offered to this project would be effectively improving the economics of the upper story components, which again are fully financed and complete. But with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
Nettie Oliverio, so, there's a lot, I think, offered to us here, but it feels like to me, the basic question is, does the retail component, the lower floor retail component, qualify for TIF? And, you know, there are TIs involved with any retail build out of that. There's already, I don't know, cold shell, warm shell existing or cold shell. So there's cold shell there. There, you know, stubs for power, HVAC, water, whatever a retailer would need. And then an obvious cost today that is exponential over what it was when people started looking at this to build out. But nonetheless, if we're already achieving market rates in there, then it says that the TIs that Land Living would offer to build this out with an incoming retailer will work, will pencil. So that, to me, that says, but for is not achieved with this.
So Mike Van Houten, for the record, help me with the legal question here. If they can't receive TIF financing for aspects that are already complete or under construction, right? That's why the apartment downtown was denied or not really entertained?
The actually attorney assistant city manager, for the record, the new residential apartment complex downtown, the question was, were they eligible for more than 100%? This board did not make a recommendation to do that. You recommended 100% of TIF and then said if there was an extension, reconsider.
Oh, no, I meant the Ross Manor.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's correct. So Ross Manor, thank you for that. Ross Manor 118 West came forward with a request. They were already on their way and had not stalled out in their application. So based off of the scoring rubric, which is included in the participation program, they were ineligible. That's correct.
So what would be the argument for including the buildings in the but-for analysis if they were already complete?
I think that's part of what the question is in front of you is if the project was able to be constructed, the question I would think is less about what has past been done and more about the future component of a catalyst based off the participation program. It talks about these massive changes of the area around it, bringing something like a High Line, something like Dallas, some San Antonio River Walk. So if they're considered, that's part of the policy choice. But if it's been constructed, they didn't go through they didn't go through a but-for test. That was something that they didn't apply for, you know, in their defense. As Mr. Gordon mentioned, the RDA was still in debt at that point. We did not have any of those programs established. But they built it without us.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Thank you for the question, board members. I really appreciate it. So the reason why we've always asked and believe received approval to analyze the building as a whole is hypothetically one building, right, is currently losing money. There's no interest in infusing more capital into a losing asset for the retail. It's just not going to happen. If you looked at it standalone with no building, then I would come before you with a standalone project, standalone retail building, but there's this huge asset above it that's losing money. So I'm not saying we need to go back in time and use prevailing wage. That's not a legal requirement, or go back in time and pretend it wasn't built. No, it's just for the financials, right? I don't think it hurts anyone for you all to get the financials because the retail is not going to get built without some assistance. And it's whether or not you're comfortable granting assistance or not, but let's analyze it. So hypothetically, to your question, board member, really good one. If the building's losing whatever, 10% a year, let's say, there's no interest in putting the retail in there because the capital partners will keep investing in a losing asset. But let's say we work it out where we have TIF and we figure out instead of negative 10%, we're at negative 8% with some TIF infusion. Now the capital partners say, okay, we're heading in the right direction. The city and us have a public-private partnership where we're bringing this asset back to a better position, and let's get that retail built. So we never thought, I'm being completely honest, that's why I pulled all this data to show you, like, this isn't some switcheroo or bait and switch. I think the record hopefully shows today, we always thought the building would be analyzed with the retail. And then all of you could sit down and have a discussion of, is that something you're comfortable with or not? But at least, board member, I think it's fair that you have that information looking at the asset and its aggregate.
With these retail spaces, are there specific tenants that you're going to pay for the tenant build out for, or is it just generic like improvements to the spaces so they're more leasable?
I'll let Line Loading address this on the call if I misstate anything, but yeah, we would have to come in there and build it out for the tenants. And so investing more money into an asset, a single building, is just not viable. But and again, I go on the record, if you approve asking for more information today, I am not holding to you that you're going to approve it that way, but at least give us a chance. SB Friedman has the data. You heard they have the data. We were shocked that no one told us that there was a change in direction at SB Friedman. We just sent SB Friedman all the data, then got their report. It sounds like there had been conversations in between that we weren't privy of. And we were shocked because Mr. Whiting on the call has spent a year working on this. And we just asked if they have the data, let's present it to you and see what happens. So sorry for the long-winded conversation, but this is really important to line to try to get this thing built out.
Nadia Oliverio, Nadia Oliverio, Mr. Gordon, going back to what you were saying about the TIs are normally a combination of what the builder owner of the property does and provides, then incorporates back into the amortization of the rent. And that's a normal part of retailing. And so the concept that the ownership is not willing to or can't put in any further investment, physical investment into developing the retail site is, I gotta say, spurious. I think that if market rate is answered right now, which it seems to be, I don't know, Lance Dorn would know, better than I about the current rental circumstances there for the tenants, but the retail tenants. But this is a business decision. It's not, I don't think this is, I still don't think this meets the TIF, but I think it's a business decision for Lion Living. Am I willing to put in the TIF, the TI requirements to bring in whatever retailer I want to have in this space, or am I not?
Mr. Chairman, I would absolutely agree. Board member, you mentioned really great points. I'm not debating at all the analysis that the retail stands on its own, right? That I'm not disputing the report, I'm not disputing those numbers or how TI works. You make some great points, right? But I'm just stating that retail is not going to get built unless you analyze the entire building. Because if the building's losing 10% and the retail is break even because there's no TIF needed, the building's still losing 10%. And as was reflected in the information from SB Friedman, they're having issues even paying the debt reserve, that no further capital is going to go into a losing asset unless we come up with a TIF arrangement that works for the whole building, which you may never get comfortable with, but I'm just asking, let's at least look and see what those numbers could be.
Colin Robertson for the record. I guess I feel that I'm not inclined to review the TIF request for retail build out. I would invite the applicant to send out for an additional analysis at their expense if they would like to see it reviewed differently by a third party, but we have had a respected and appreciated partner in SB Friedman doing a lot of analysis over the years. And I don't feel like there's a lot of small businesses that would like to have underwriting of retail TIs. We don't do that. It's also not our job. And I think that is kind of part and parcel of a project that I would like to know from the applicant or Mr. Gordon or SB Friedman, Lance, if anybody has any information about whether there was any analysis of the need for this retail space in the first place, given that a lot of what we are doing as a board is advising on projects that are about the identified needs of housing that were pulled from this project in September of 2025.
Happy to address that. So as part of the presentation, dealing with the catalyst that talks about needing destination retail, right? And so part of the presentation I made was the existing buildings are just not performing as they anticipated with occupancy, to be frank. And so how do you bring in new occupancy? It's more of that experience district, Reno Experience District that they want. And so more retail, we believe, will absolutely bring more people and excitement and tenants to the area. And so the fact that we're asking to bring in this retail, we're happy to come back to you when there is a project with what retailers or tenants would be coming in. But yeah, I think you look at any kind of market analysis, getting the retail in to a mixed use project is critical to get that experience district that they want. And again, I really appreciate your comments, board member. I'm not, again, trying to do anything other than in my presentation in March to this body, and you directed SB Friedman to analyze this as a whole. And they were analyzing it, as you heard, as a whole up until the end of last year. Then we're redirected for some reason, and we're just asking to go back to analyzing it as a whole as this body recommended.
I've got some questions.
Yeah.
So maybe I misunderstood. The original project, my recollection, had two components. It had a catalyst project component, and then it had a separate TIF component. And the catalyst project had 4 new residential buildings as well as build out of some retail space.
Correct.
And then the TIF project had just the build out, I think, of the Emory and then the Outpost new building.
Correct.
But application was seeking 2 different things.
Correct.
Trying to understand where we are today, because it sounds like what's on the table is kind of a piece of each. It's a build out of part of the retail that was part of the original catalyst and a build out of the retail that was part of the TIF. Am I
I'd
understanding
say
that right?
that's a fair analysis based off of the request of all of the residential was removed.
So is there still a catalyst application?
There's one analysis of TIF needs.
Well, let me clarify why I'm asking the question. Because for me, kind of the first question, you're only going to be able to qualify for TIF other than what you generate from wherever, if you're a catalyst project. So to me, a lot of this starts with if it is a catalyst project or not. If it's not anymore, then we're really just looking at, does the project in and of itself generate sufficient to meet the budget forecast? If it's still a catalyst, then I want to see analysis of how this piece fits in with the overall piece of all catalyst. And again, this is where I feel like I'm lacking some policy direction from the board, but if it's piece 1 of 5 pieces of a catalyst and piece 1 doesn't, but the other 4 do, then maybe there's conditions of approval that the other 4 have to be built before you actually recapture it. But that for me, the one I'm struggling with is this a catalyst? What's being proposed anymore? And I'm ignoring all the prior construction, just what's being proposed.
And so I think that's probably where it's part of the policy conversation. Two things that I will state is that based off of the Catalyst project as it's listed in the participation program, I think the question in front of you is, are you considering the previous build to be the catalyst, or are you considering future build out to be the definition of
Yeah, I'm
catalyst?
just saying, for my purposes, I'm talking about future.
You're talking about
Are they-
future.
Are they applying as a catalyst for future construction?
And so from a staff perspective, the analysis is still the same from, is there a need? And so we have evaluated what is still in front of us, which is all of the retail build out based off pulling out the residential. I know it feels like I'm not answering your question directly. I'm not trying
So do you
to, I'm not trying
consider
to
that
be
a
evasive.
catalyst project with the
I mean,
residential pulled out?
Are you still applying for a catalyst project excluding previous construction?
I wish I had the minutes from 2025, because this came up, and we specifically talked about this is designated as a catalyst project. And I would be bringing project by project to you under the umbrella of that catalyst project. I think I specifically stated.
Yeah, my recollection though, that the catalyst component had the 4 residential and the retail in it. Is that my recollection wrong?
That's your recollection, and the buildings, as I mentioned in my presentation, the buildings that this retail was going to. And we had a discussion about, well, okay, let's just play this out. Are you trying to ask for tip dollars from existing improvements? And I said, yes, if we get there, but we first need to analyze it. So if we talked about getting tip from existing improvements in the future, of course you have to analyze the performance of the Catalyst project in the aggregate.
I'm gonna catch up because I want to make sure you understand my question. I'm trying to understand, when you came back, when you came before us the first time, I was under the impression there were going to be 4 new buildings plus retail build out, and that was your Catalyst project. Is that correct?
I would say that is correct, but it was still our understanding that the Catalyst project was the umbrella of that boundary Ashley showed.
So, yeah, so for me, the direction staff was, yeah, let's take a look at the new construction that's proposed. And if that qualifies as a catalyst, then to me, I'm having a conversation of, can you recapture the increment from the prior construction, which you probably could in a catalyst, because I can recapture it from anywhere. And then this the discussion of whether we think that's an appropriate use for this one. But where I'm struggling today is, I don't feel like they're a catalyst project anymore, because those 4 buildings aren't being constructed, and now you're just doing the retail. And does the retail build out that you're proposing in total qualify as a catalyst? Does it reach that 50 million threshold? Does it check all the other boxes? I don't feel like I've got that in front of me today to answer that question. So I don't know whether what you're doing in total new qualifies as a catalyst. I don't even get to the question of the analysis. That's 1. 2, this is the policy question. I'm still wondering, how do we treat if there's an existing building, if there's an existing business operation, how does that play into our but-for analysis? For example, in the GSR, we look at the enhancement it would create to the existing casino operations, and how did that offset the losses from the other one? What if it's flipped? Do we look at that? I don't feel like we've really debated the policy or I don't have a good understanding of when you consider that and when you don't. But I also think it's a real fair comment that you guys are saying, is that does the project stand alone on its own? Everybody would like some TI build outs. Later on the agenda today, we're talking about vacant storefronts and what are we going to do to help them? Now, maybe different because those are blighted versus the red might not be considered blight. But there's a lot of questions that I've got that I don't feel like I could say I'm dying or approve. I really would like a little more information on it, but I'm not leaning in a good way for you right now.
If I could add one component, Mr. Chair, to your point of that policy component. Those of you who watched the redevelopment agency meeting that happened 2 weeks ago, they had conversations around the policy because we took forward the Lake Street application that said more than 100%. What do we do? Part of the direction that we received is that application is on hold, and staff is going to be evaluating some policy decisions that will need to be made. And we're going to do that by way of the participation program in order to bring those back. Those are scheduled for July. So those will come to this body for you to weigh in on those policies. Some of those are, do you give more than 100%? When is it appropriate? Do you go into existing increment? When is that appropriate? So those will be some policy decisions that will come before this body. That will then be recommendations to the RDA that will happen in July. Doesn't help you today, but it is to hear, we hear you. We also would like some of that consistent policy direction, the same concept of who pays for them. Right now, it's been the direction that the agency pays for each of these. There's a substantial cost that comes with each of these TIF applications when we have them reviewed outside. It's cheaper than hiring an underwriter and staff, but it's certainly some decisions that need to come forward. So we hear the concern.
The one I would add to that too is the obsolescence recapture and how that plays into it. Because if applicant puts in $1 million of TIs that increase the value of the building, there is a new increment that's created above and beyond the obsolescence recapture. So how does that play into it too?
Okay, we'll note that as well. And that's based off the assessor. So we'll see if we can get some clearer direction from his office.
Chairman, just a quick response. So appreciate that input, board member. I would say, if you're inclined to continue it today, and we can get back to those additional new improvements and how those play in and make sure we stay as a catalyst project and how we would review those. Basically, we're going to give you some more information and come back to you with a more fuller explanation of how this is going to get built out. We were in good faith, guys, under the impression that, we bring you single projects, they'd be looked at in the aggregate. I'm reading the writing on the wall here that if I just show up with one project and it doesn't meet the but-for standalone, that's not going to work for you. It needs to come back with a couple projects, new projects, and how that potentially meets or doesn't meet the but-for. So I would just say that I'm not disputing that the report on the record is bad information, right? Like it's good information. So I prefer not to vote up or down on TIP for the retail because we're not going to use it. I'd rather a continuance. So let me go back, talk to the client, come back to you with more information. If that's where we're headed, Mr. Chair, I've read the tea leaves of my life a couple times and see where it's headed.
What other comments?
The Colin Robertson for the record, I guess I share the notion that having further guidance around these kinds of questions would be valuable. However, I do not see that this project, as it's been proposed and as it has been evaluated, meets the but-for test, which is our first and foremost requirement of our responsibility as a board. As a result, I would not favor a motion to advise the RDA to move it forward at this time. However, we have had projects that we have said if circumstances changed or policy guidance shifted, the meaning of that to revisit it at another time. But I think it goes to the question of I don't feel like I have an answer yet as to whether or not there was any real analysis besides a hunch that the retail was supported in the economics of the project. And I think in the result, what we see in this analysis that is based on the information available to SP Friedman, an accurate representation to us of the not meeting the but-for, and that matters to me in advising the RDA.
I would agree. I'm not at all comfortable recommending anything be forwarded to the board as a whole. For me, it's when the applicant came before us originally, it was going to come in phases. I'd like to see what the whole picture is. What's the entirety of the proposed project and how does this one piece fit into it? And does it qualify as a catalyst? Because I don't disagree with you. The analysis is what it is, and it doesn't meet the but-for on this one piece. But part of the question is, if let's just say hypothetically there's 6 pieces and it's a catalyst, and in the combination as the six as a whole qualifies, then I'm talking more about how do you condition the first that you don't receive anything till you've built the other 5. So for me, continuance seems appropriate, especially because the applicant's willing to continue his application. Just to get more information about, give me the entirety of what you're proposing to build new construction. And then we can figure out whether none of them meet the but for, easy.
There's one thing, it's kind of interesting, just knowing the history of that specific property. It's hard not to reflect on that and how important that specific piece is. It's the gateway on Plum to the airport, and just the struggle of that entire intersection through the years, and many people coming to the table and renderings in the newspaper about how great it's going to be. And so it's hard not to think back to that, even though we're looking at numbers on papers and analysis, but in terms of redevelopment and investment, part of me, just my gut feeling is that area needs to do well. It needs to do well, and the entire city is kind of contingent on that specific property. So I just wanted to share those type of thoughts with you all, just in terms of thinking about the past and also the future of redevelopment in Reno. Kara, is there anything you would like to say online? Don't have to. Anybody else? Mike? Go ahead.
Mike,
Paul,
oh, sorry.
that's okay. Kara Harris for the record. I would agree. I would like to see, I agree with your sentiments, Paul. I mean, we absolutely want that district to succeed. And, to Michael's point, I don't know if we're going to piecemeal it. This might not be the exact thing for the retail space. But I do think there is a possibility for a catalyst project with multiple things combined to stand something up. And I want to see it succeed, but I don't think this individual piece of it makes sense with what we're doing. But it doesn't mean that there isn't other things that could help stand up that retail portion if they decided not to move forward with the catalyst project. So I'd like to see more, but I can't see moving it forward in this vein today with what we have.
What's your definition of a catalyst project?
The redevelopment agency's definition, which
Yeah.
is not mine, is based off the participation program. And this is page 11 of the participation program, which was adopted by the redevelopment agency in August of 2024. Just part of with this application, which included 4 separate build outs of 359 residential units. And all 4 of those were requested to be pulled from the analysis in September, as they told SP Friedman that they're going to consider transitioning those to a townhome market product and then submitting a new application is what staff was told. So I think that's part of the question of, is it a catalyst? I believe with pulling those out based off of definition listed on page 11, placemaking or adaptive reuse project, creating unique public space in largely urban area. Examples include the High Line in Manhattan, St. Pete Pier, located in St. Petersburg, downtown waterfront, Denver Union Station, Grove Plaza in Boise, dense mixed-use housing development, increasing downtown development density and encouraging street-level pedestrian activity. Examples include Playa Vista in LA, Symphony Park in Vegas, Riverfront Park in Denver, and Nashville Yards in Nashville. An anchor corporate headquarters campus serving as a catalyst to attract area employees. Examples include Amazon in South Lake Union District of Seattle, Toyota headquarters in San Antonio, and the Comcast Innovation and Technology Center in Philadelphia. Destination or experiential retail, attracting a mix of daytime and nighttime activity in the area with a focus on open or civic space. Examples include Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, Avalon and Alpharetta, Georgia, and downtown Summerlin in Las Vegas. Lastly, is an anchor investment such as a museum, university, medical campus, or other venue. Examples include the Guggenheim Museum in Spain and the Cleveland Innovation District anchored by the Cleveland Clinic. And those are all identified specifically in the agency's participation program.
For me, I don't consider the pickleball place and some retail improvements to their existing spaces necessarily a catalyst project. To me, it's just a kind of a normal retail project. If there are other things included in that, or if the original residential was included in it, I definitely would consider it a catalyst project, partially because of the project cost overall and the impact it would make to the surrounding environment. You know, people living there suddenly helps out Reno Public Market more. And the new retail being built across the street. Whereas I think the electric pickle really mostly just benefits that project internally. If there's any way to get some of these other plans included in the application, I would feel way more inclined. Because if you look back at the Fifth Street project that we approved the funding gap analysis for, the TIP financing was only for the parking garage portion, but we were definitely taking into consideration the residential that was going to accompany that. And I don't know how we would all have felt if it was just the parking garage that came forward and not the residential component of it, even though the residential wasn't a part of the TIP financing at all. I kind of look at it the same way here. If there was more included in the overall project phases than just a pickleball place, I would consider it more of a catalyst, but just that facility on its own, plus, you know, 3 or 4 improvements to the existing retail. Because the other argument is you guys have leased more spaces in the last year than I think the first few years of the project with Squeeze In coming in, the ice cream place, the barber place, you have the hub. And so that's the other component of me is just for the retail spot. If SP Freeman said it didn't meet the but-for analysis, it's hard to argue with that. Even if it has attached residential, you know, I don't know. That's just my kind of thoughts on it. If it was more than the retail, it would be easier to take that in consideration. But with just the retail on its own, I don't know if I consider that a catalyst project at Pickleball Place, especially when there's one 2 miles away that already opened.
Okay,
I can make a motion to, I can understand the merit of reviewing the sort of schema of the entirety of the project, and would move to continue this to another agenda of our advisory board pending that analysis. So that we can be clear and sure basically on the decision making.
I can second that. I think it'd be very helpful just to get a picture of the totality of what the applicant's proposing to construction and how that plays in all the questions we have. So I can second that.
That was Colin Robertson for the record and Michael Bundy for the second. For the record.
And is there anything specific to staff you'd want included in that analysis back?
I think they take from the comments we have what we're looking for.
Yeah. Yep. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Or nay, whatever that fits into.
Okay. Motion passes.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. We'll be back.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more action item for possible action, which is B5, possible recommendation of RDA regarding the implementation of a vacant storefront activation program. Please.
I don't know if it works. Usually it'll click it, but she'll click it.
Just click through.
We'll click through portal.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Rachel McIntyre, placemaking manager for the record. We're here today to talk about vacant storefront activation, specifically as it relates to RDA 1, and more specifically, how it relates to the downtown core and RDA Virginia Street. Back last year, in our budget, we were approved for a retail attraction budget of $150,000. Staff has spent the first part of this year doing a lot of research on all the different ways that we could go about retail attraction and how to spend those funds. We had the opportunity to attend ICSC last year and looked at that as an avenue for retail attraction. We met with a number of retail attraction companies, had a bunch of calls, learned what their services and scopes could be and how that could help us really address the problem we're here to talk about today, which is vacant storefront activation. In all of that research, we found that there are a number of approaches that we could take. And today we're going to talk about 4 that we really feel like could be most significant in helping us move the needle with filling the blight and vacancy of downtown. So we don't need to read through this line item by line item. I think we all know what the problem is. And the problem is that we have a number of properties in our downtown core that continue to sit blighted and vacant year over year, some of them for 20 years, 30 years. And, this could be attributed to a lot of different things. One is that we know we have limited broker engagement in some of these properties. We have ground floor floor plates that are massive, that don't really provide reasonable accommodation for small businesses to want to return and to be able to return back to our downtown Main Street. And we also have some disengaged property owners. There's a lot of incentive to keep your property vacant and empty, as I'm sure many of us understand. So today we're going to talk about a few different ways that we can address that. So why this matters? We know what happens when folks are here, whether you're visiting from out of town or you're looking at bringing South Renoites to downtown. And we know what happens. Pioneer Center has an amazing production. They park, maybe they hit Wild River Grill or Liberty. Yeah. Okay. Know what happens when folks come in for the volleyball tournament. We're seeing that this early right now. Volleyball tournament and the bowling tournament. They're in town. They're here and they're leaving their hotels and they're walking around and they're saying, what's happening is it's creating a public perception, both for folks looking to invest in our downtown from a development perspective, folks visiting our town, and folks who might even consider living in our downtown, that it's unsafe. There's a lot of ways that we can address the perception of safety. We have the work that the Downtown Reno Partnership is doing around clean and safe with ambassadors and making sure that the streets are clean, that there's a physical enforcement presence. We've had a lot of discussion around RPD. We've seen the success that Restore is already bringing with our facade improvements. But what we know right now is that the one area we haven't tried to attack is how we drive more incremental foot traffic to our downtown core. One way that we can do that is with activation. We've talked about that in the event space. We haven't really talked about it in how we activate vacant storefronts, how we give people a reason to not just come downtown for a thing, but to stay downtown, to invest in downtown, to live downtown. Slide. So we didn't just pull a rabbit out of a hat with this. So what we went to is we looked at the adopted plans, specifically the Downtown Action Plan and the Virginia Street Placemaking Study, both of which call for a need to invest in a retail attraction strategy and specifically to focus on the vacant storefront activations for the Virginia Street corridor. Really focusing on how do we bring that pedestrian traffic back downtown? So we know that our vacant storefronts hinder revitalization. We had a conversation just recently with a developer downtown who's making a very large investment in downtown. And one of the things that they shared, they're hearing from prospective tenants, is retailers are nervous. They're nervous about signing top tier rent rate lease agreements with a new development that's going to be pretty amazing, because they look out the window of that property and they just see vacancy and blight. So we know the impact, right? We know it dampens private investment. We know it erodes the sense of place for our downtown. And we know that it limits opportunities for local entrepreneurs. It's really hard. There are a number of people that have reached out to myself, to Ashley, to Jenica, and they're saying, hey, we hear there's some really cool stuff happening downtown, and we'd love to explore opening a storefront there. Well, we can't. We hear all the reasons why we can't. Can't get anyone to call us back. they're really trash storefronts, and like just the cost that it would take me to go in and clean them up and put in the TIs. There's a barrier to entry there, or the footprint's just too big. We'd love to do something here, and it's actually a great location, but the footprint's too big. And you see a disengagement of property owners from wanting to slice up and really make those spaces more usable. I think we've seen that, right? Reno Public Market did a great job, took a really big project, in a really big space, and was able to create micro retail opportunities and smaller footprints and alongside larger footprints. Yeah, next slide. So today we're asking you to take a look at a few different policy options and consider them. To tackle persistent vacancy on Virginia Street, we're evaluating strategies, each with varying risks, each with varying investment, and each with varying market impact. Each option here is going to represent a best practice across various organizations. We've looked at other redevelopment agencies, business improvement districts. We've done extensive research with the International Downtown Association, which is kind of an overarching organization that supports business improvement districts and other municipality and agencies specifically to address this problem. And we've reviewed dozens upon dozens of case studies. One that I was sitting there this morning regretting I didn't include in this slide, and that's recently what happened in downtown Denver with their move to reactivate 16th Street Mall. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about everything from facilitator and broker engagement, activator, looking at pop-ups, to direct market participation, us being a leaseholder, and maybe even to acquisition. So first up, let's talk a little bit about direct market participation. In this scenario, this would be the RDA coming in, doing research on vacant properties downtown, and saying, okay, we think we found one or two that work within our budget. We would work with the property owner to negotiate a rent rate that's fair and reasonable. We would go in, we would invest, either have the property owner invest in the TIs with us signing on as a leaseholder, or us directly investing in the property with the TI allowance. Once that is selected, we would then go and do an RFP to find the right business activation for that property. All of this is to say these are all just beginning conversations. So what this would look like, so that you have some awareness, is if you were to say, yep, Rachel, we like this idea, go bring us back something. That's exactly what we'll spend the next month doing, is we'll spend the next month talking to property owners, touring, looking at the cost of TIs for these projects, looking at the spaces that are most viable. We have some ideas because we know of the vacant properties and kind of what's available and what money is needed to go into them. But we would bring that back to you and we would say, hey, here's everything that we looked at. And here's our recommendation. What do you guys think? Once we had your recommendation on the go-ahead, the next step would then be to start looking at what do we think is the right activation for that storefront, or storefronts, plural. So any and all of these come with a varying degree of risk. And so some things to consider for us. This allows us to kind of really take control and ensure that we're getting the right activations, the right tenant mix to really address the challenges that we're seeing for visitors, Renoites, and developers alike. It allows for us to select high visibility sites to say, eat the vacancies block by block, if you will. We know what we can do if we were able to say address the Riverwalk first. We know what we could be able to do if we were able to start at the Arch. There's a lot of different paths that we could take to address this work, but really this allows us the most control. Some considerations, right? There is financial exposure and lease liability. I think we all know that we wouldn't be looking at it's going to be like a $20,000 lease per month. That just doesn't seem like a very reasonable approach to take. So we would want to be conservative in our risk and encourage this body to advise us and hold us accountable to being conservative with the risk as well. Staff capacity for property management. There's a lot of different models. Some of them involve direct property management, some involve managing pop-ups, some of them involve just a straight sublease, which minimizes that. And then it requires careful property selection, again, to mitigate risk. What we don't necessarily want to do is pick a property and have it flop, because we have to be very mindful of island effect. We've seen what happens when we take a very excited retailer, we put them in a space and they're on an island alone. This really takes an effort of a lot of strategic work to make sure that this person or people who are able to go into these spaces are able to be successful, not just on their own, but with the surrounding businesses. Next slide. Next up is we could look at a facilitation role. This one does come with a bit of concern. I'm not entirely sure based on our NRS how viable this will be, but it is a strategy that other RDAs and cities have done. And that is direct broker engagement, is where cities, redevelopment agencies, bids come together and offer a broker incentive. The challenge that we know, we've already spoken when we sent the staff report, City of Reno legal team was just like, ooh, this might be an issue with this NRS. So we said, we understand no decisions are being made right now, but we want to at least make sure that you all have awareness and visibility to that as well, that this may or may not be a viable option at the moment. Some considerations here. We've attempted broker engagement pretty seriously over the last 2 years, and we haven't had a whole lot of success. Now, there can be a coordinated marketing campaign. We could host regular roundtables. We've talked about, doing city walks with prospective tenants that we know and bringing the brokers and the tenants together. There's a lot that we could do with this program, but I think the considerations are really challenging in this particular model, specifically as it requires owner cooperation. It requires the property owner to say, yep, I'm in. And then to also want to make the investment in the spaces, which we have restored. The properties that we're talking about addressing, we know that those property owners currently haven't seen the value of reinvesting in the properties. It doesn't directly address the oversized footprints that we need to really start to think about how we're going to tackle. And the impact would be slower and far less predictable. We can play the role of the activator. And this is one that I think you see most commonly, and it's most commonly led by business improvement districts. Pop-up and temporary activation. This would look like we go in, we find a vanilla shell, or we find a space, we make it a vanilla shell, and we start working on pop-up models, whether it's temporary art galleries or immersive art experiences, or you could say, hey, we actually think it should be food and bev. And we look for a place that has a grease interceptor. And we start running pop-up kitchens to allow some of our food trucks or folks in the community who have business ideas. Maybe they have a new restaurant concept and they want to pilot it or test it. We've seen success in these in other cities. Las Vegas has 4 incubators, like kitchen incubators, that are working pretty well for them. So there's a number of opportunities that we could look out of this. Some of the challenges with this, one is just the overhead and management of running a pop-up program. 2 is the upfront capital investment. 3 really depends on property owner alignment. When you look at the programs across the country that are doing this, they vary. Some of them is a property owner saying, yeah, you can just use my space. Sounds good. It's been sitting empty forever. See what you can do. Maybe you can get it leased. I don't know that we have that level of interest right now from our property owners sitting on their vacant properties, but maybe. You have also seen it where folks go in and sign a sublease or sign a master lease, and then they do short-term pop-up lease agreements. You can look to a third party to help manage this. There are companies that we've met through the International Downtown Association that actually do this for their business. They kind of run the pop-up incubators. So the challenge that we have here is that you do run the risk of churn without ever actually moving the needle. The goal here is not that we go in and lose money on this. The goal is that RDA doesn't necessarily need to be making money off the property if we do some sort of sublease or pop-up program, but we definitely need to recoup our costs. And there's a challenge with this model. You might see more churn without the conversion to long-term lease that we'd be looking for. All right, next up is probably our highest risk that we'd be talking about, but definitely fits within the RDA's role, and that's property acquisition. This allows for us to really focus on high visibility properties, work directly with the property owner, and look at acquiring. I tend to be a little more on the risk averse side. I tend to be like, let's try it on first. Let's give it a test drive for a year. Let's see how the program works. And then let's buy the car. Maybe we rent a couple first. But this board and this body might have an appetite for higher level risk. And there's a lot of RDA examples across the country of folks who have gone in, purchased. We know we acquire buildings, we renovate them, and we turn them over. And we sell them. So there's a lot of different ways that this program itself could work. I think this one gives us the opportunity to stay most in our lane. And that is one of the questions that, we're going to ask y'all to weigh in on today is, this is a lane and it's a need. It's not directly an RDA lane. And we want to be really transparent about that on the upfront. This particular option is the most in the RDA lane. So we have a variety of case studies. As I said, there are dozens upon dozens of these. I tried to pick 4 that have been around for a long time and have proven results. So we can start first with Seattle Restored. Seattle Restored is a program that focuses on pop-up. And so what they do is they work with specific property owners who have vacant spaces, and then they have a grant program that they pair with it. And the pop-up tenant can get anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 in a grant to go and open a pop-up location. They all have varying durations, varying times, no match requirements, straight grant. Now, we could design our program to say you have to have a match requirement. Who knows? I think it depends on what it is that we're looking to attract as well. Are we looking for creditworthy tenants, or are we looking to give an opportunity to, we look at Riverside Farmers Market and they, dozens upon dozens of vendors who have established e-commerce businesses, but maybe don't have a brick and mortar, and they need to test it out. This is an interesting one from a staff capacity perspective. This is a lot of property management, depending on if you did 1 storefront or 2, because you want to be adjacent. And it does, again, put us at a bit of risk and exposure with lease liability, more so than a straight sublease tenant where they're signing. There is some equity, or what's the word I'm looking for? Skin in the game. They have a bit more skin in the game with a longer term lease agreement. But Seattle Restored has been around for a long time. It has won many awards through IDA as a program that is proven to help them activate and fill vacant storefronts long term. Downtown Dallas has a broker incentive program, Focus. So it's a retail program that is in partnership. It's managed and run by their bid, and it is funded in partnership by the bid and the city of Dallas. Again, I don't want to oversell this one, because after we had kind of worked through all of our programs, we did learn this may not be an option for us to NRS. But it puts directly some of the results, right? It puts the brokers directly into the city's recruitment strategy. It gives us kind of that connection and that through line directly to our brokers, hopefully with the incentive and increased awareness to all of the opportunities that are downtown. I think, some of the key takeaways: broker incentives align in the commercial brokerage community with downtown revitalization goals. I think here the challenge that we have seen again and again is that I don't know that we have an engaged broker community that would want to necessarily proactively participate to help us see the results that we're looking for. But Dallas has had great success with this program. Minneapolis is another one. Minneapolis has done some great work partnering. This is through their business improvement district, but partnering with property owners. They brought an in-house broker into their business improvement district, and they've gone and said, hey, how about you no longer lease your property? How about you let us do it? And they're seeing great success with that. So there's a few different ways that this program could work as well. Okay. Vacant to Vibrant. This is probably one of the most long-standing and successful programs that you'll see out there. And this launched in San Francisco. It is a hybrid of sublease and pop-up. And this model has had great results. So 33 pop-up businesses launched, and more than half have already transitioned into long-term lease agreements. This is the model that downtown Denver took, just literally pulled the playbook from Vacant to Vibrant to do the 16th Street activation as well. There's been a lot that's gone into this. What I also think is really interesting is the funding. So this is predominantly funded through the Office of Economic Development. It is managed by a third party, and they have started a nonprofit to help fund this. And so they saw the success of the program with their pilot, and they knew that to be able to grow and scale into as many vacant storefront activations as they needed to and wanted to, that they would need a different funding source long term. So lots of really good nuggets that we can pull away from this. And last but not least, so we come to the acquisition slide. This is a bit of an older example, but I think a really relevant one. And it's something that downtown Grand Rapids, their RDA did between the 80s and the 2000s. They went in, as you can see, 50 plus historic buildings were restored and activated. They went in, they had projects, they had properties, they purchased them, they flipped them. Some of them they flipped and sold. Some of them they took kind of like a hybrid approach where they said, okay, we bought the building, we renovated the building, we're now going to be the property owner of the building as well, so that they could strategically get the types of businesses and verticals and tenant mix that they needed to activate their downtown in the way that addressed the feedback they were hearing from residents, visitors, and developers. So this one, again, probably the most closely aligned in the RDA lane. I think, this body will weigh in on the risk and kind of what y'all have an appetite for. I think we should have an appetite for. Next slide. So some considerations for you all. First and foremost, what's the desired level of RDA intervention that you want us to have in the private market as it looks to addressing vacancy and blight storefronts in downtown? It's our tolerance for financial risk and capital deployment. We currently have $150,000 that is set aside. Y'all have approved next year's budget recommendations to the board. We're obviously still waiting on that to get approved, but in that budget is another $150,000 for next year as well. What's the speed of visible activation that's desired? The nice thing about some of these models is this could be really low-hanging fruit. This could be an opportunity for us to see some things turn on downtown a little more quickly than the larger development projects that we know we need long-term. Long-term versus short-term impact. What are we really looking for here? And then alignment with the broader redevelopment goals and fiscal priorities. So next slide. Again, just to recap, we currently have $150,000 that was allocated for what was called retail attraction for this year. And then next year's budget has a proposed $150,000 as well. Should this body decide to move forward with the recommendation for us to take to the RDA board, here's kind of a rough idea on the timeline. We are looking to move expeditiously on this program. It's something that we feel like we have the capacity to do right now and the vision to do right now, and would like to see kind of a start the next fiscal year strong with this application. So yeah, we'd be looking, dependent on kind of how this board advises and decides to move forward. This could be a potential implementation timeline for you.
Okay.
So, questions, discussion.
A lot of information there. We'd like to.
You said that the current owners aren't incentivized to list their properties. Why is that? Rather than just being curmudgeons.
How freely I speak.
Yes, free.
You're in the recorded meeting.
Yeah. I think there's a variety of reasons. I think we have property owners that have very large portfolios. And sometimes.
Understood.
Yeah, sometimes it might be to a benefit to not be proactive in these businesses.
I can speak to that.
Is that prevalent?
I think there's a few things, right? I think that is a potential challenge. I think another potential challenge is, well, why would I invest money when I don't have a tenant? Give me a tenant and then I'll invest the money, maybe. And it's a chicken egg situation. We've had conversations with some property owners or their brokers, their representation, where they've said, unless you can bring me Zara, we're not investing. And so there are a lot of reasons why.
So the reason I asked was kind of all of your options require some level of cooperation from the owner.
Yes.
Is that realistic? Are they going to cooperate?
I do think based on some conversations we've had over the last 2 years, I do believe that there are a couple of property owners that have an appetite either for the acquisition route or for us to sign a master lease.
Yeah.
I would also say, Mr. Chair, if I could jump in, the reason why I would be remiss if I did not take every opportunity in a public setting that I can to remind people of Nevada's incredibly regressive property tax system.
Yep.
And so based off of the age of the buildings downtown, they have reached full obsolescence. And so property tax on some of these buildings downtown is very, very low. And so from an incentive standpoint, if their property tax is $1,000 a year, sometimes even smaller, regardless of the footprint, it's not a big nut to crack for them to just keep it. And it's more work.
And the second they submit a building permit, Washoe County will see that and then boop, there goes their their taxes, so they're incentivized not to do anything, basically.
That was kind of my question, of all of these
Yep.
require some cooperation, but if you've identified some, and I'll just send. I'm kind of running out of time myself. On the master lease sublease approach, one thing I would suggest you consider is an option to lease. So you're not actually on the hook for the lease liability, you don't have any money going out the door. You've tied it down for, let's say, 5 years at a rate, then you go negotiate, find a tenant, and then assign it. So you're never actually the tenant. So you do all of your work, whether some TI incentives, whatever.
Okay.
But you've got the ability from the landlord to actually make it happen.
And Mike Van Houten, for the records, I have kind of go back and look at what the original problem is with these vacant buildings, which is number one, national retail tenants are not going to be in a position to come downtown anytime soon. So it's mostly small local businesses. Number one, the spaces are too big for them, the majority, for them to sign something that is going to take up so much of their monthly capital for having a space larger than they actually need. And number two, the cost of permitting, they're probably in some of these spaces looking at between 150, 300 grand in permits alone to bring it not just up to Reno code, but international builder code before the insides of them can even be touched and improved on and putting in furniture and stuff. So I think whatever we choose has to meet those challenges or else nothing's really going to change. That's why I'm not really into the broker incentive option, because I think there has been marketing of these properties on LoopNet. They've been listed there forever for lease. Some of them have big for lease signs right in the windows. I just don't see that as being a good way to go. And you might also end up rewarding the wrong people, I think, in that case, and not necessarily the small business owners. I'd love to pick an option that will fix those two issues, reduce the size of the spaces, and then
Especially the depth.
the depth, and then make it so that a small business can open there without having to invest 400 grand off the top into permits before they even really look at construction. Because I was talking with the developer of the Chunky building, and he paid about 350 grand in permits before he even broke ground on the project. And those were basically existing adaptive reuse spaces where he took a gigantic space and constructed them to be more reasonable leases for small businesses. This is exactly what we would be looking at doing downtown. So I love the master lease option. I think that worked really well with West Street Market. That's what we did there. We leased that building. We did the tenant improvements. And when we subleased, I think for the first 10 years to under market value rents for the tenants there. And it might have been a little bit before its time. I don't know if there's enough residents downtown when they did that to support it. Now I think something like that would really take off. So I'd love to see an option that addresses those two main issues for small businesses, because I've been told the property owners downtown aren't going to invest $500,000 plus into improving their tenant space unless they get like a national type retailer. And there's certainly not going to be any small businesses who can afford that to, some extent, unless they at least get met in the middle. So those are my thoughts. If we're going to do this, I want something that works.
Yeah, Colin Robertson, for the record, I share that fully, that view from Member Van Houten. The thing I feel is that we've tried two of these options multiple times, the broker incentivization and essentially storefront beautification and all very limited. $150,000 is not a lot of money to get anything meaningful. Right. And it would be, to my mind, the master lease option, especially with Member Pani's advice about making sure there's an option for pass-through to a new tenant, is really valuable. I tend to think that our community tends to be kind of risk averse, I think, but we have been too risk averse for too long, and that's what's led us to where we are. And that is why I think we need a kind of like we need demonstration projects that are more than like painted plywood. And we need those to be something that helps to curate a space for the right kind of tenant and the right kind of space. And if we could model that and start to grow that, we would be very well off.
Nettie Oliverio, so I'm wondering what conversations you've had with current businesses downtown, especially our largest businesses, as to, and our largest employers, as to what they are looking forward to with revitalization and perhaps collaboration. This, you know, working on the kind of the vagrancy, the feel of vagrancy, the feel of lack of tenants hurts them as well. And if it feels like to me, if we were all working together on that, and there's, you know, a gazillion years ago, before any of us were around, Reno and Las Vegas were the only places to gamble.
Yeah.
Now there's urban gaming everywhere. And it's interesting to me that, you know, the places we typically look at to say, okay, so how did they do it? They don't have gaming in downtown. We do. We already have huge businesses that are bringing a ton of people into our downtown environment, but we don't provide anything else for them. And okay, so, you know, shame on those large businesses that don't provide anything else. Their history has been that they want their customer to come stay inside and, you know, clean out their pockets and then go away. But what if their eyes lift as well? That encourages them to, yes, have your customer come, have a great time in that environment, come out and do some other things, stay a couple of days longer, participate in more things.
Or come downtown more frequently.
And come downtown more frequently.
My concern, Colin Robinson, for the record, to add back to that was that it's a lot of churn on staff in the event of like a pop-up option that is just. We all, I think, experience people who have misperceptions and reliable perceptions about downtown. But there's also a great number of people who come very infrequently and could miss all of the activations. Still hit the cycle that is like reinforcing the misperception. So it seems to me we ought to invest in sort of more sustained and more sustainable options.
I went out for the record, another question, but the pop-ups versus the master lease. The same tenant improvements would have to happen no matter which of those we pursued, right? Are there different permit requirements for a pop-up than a lease?
There's not different, Ashley Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record, there's not different requirements based on the lease type. There would be different requirements based off the use. And so if the use type is existing for some reason, then there would be fewer permits that would needed to be pulled. So Rachel's example of if we're trying to support a restaurant going into a previous space that was used as office only. That's a change in use, which is going to trigger a tremendous amount of permits. Obviously, anytime you've got a kitchen, grease, interceptor, commercial. But if you're going from a mixed use retail to a mixed use retail, the frontage may be huge, but it's the same use. And so that's going to change your permit. So your example that you brought forward of the junkie building, they not only changed the individual size of that footprint, there was also a tremendous use change that happened because each of those storefronts had a different use.
Gotcha.
So that's what makes your permits more expensive.
150 for a grease interceptor.
And Rachel McIntyre for the record, I think this will be an interesting conversation for this body to have as we explore properties that are available and how, I don't want to say turnkey ready. We all know none of them are truly turnkey ready, but which ones are more closer to turnkey ready? And then what are we looking for? So I'll use an example. There's the owners of Incline. Have any of you been to Incline Bowl in Incline?
Yeah, anytime. They're all the time.
Love Incline Bowl.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay. Do they have appetite? We have the vacant bowling alley. Like, do they have appetite? I don't know. So there's conversations we had, and we can look at properties very specifically. to figure out the best way to turn them on, and with the right partner, from a tenant perspective.
And is that what the initial probably 150 grand would go towards, is starting those discussions? Cause you probably, with that much money or little money, you wouldn't get very far with either the leasing or the ownership components, right? And so how would that first allotment of money be used?
So I would say for what the board's being asked today is your recommendation of what you would recommend to the RDA for staff to do more research. And so we know that we have $150,000 budgeted in FY26, which is currently where we are. We haven't spent any of that because we're developing the program. You recommended that program move forward next year of $150,000. If the RDA approves that, then in theory, we'll have 300 grand in the bank that we could then look at what is a reasonable lease amount, if that's the decision, if it's a down payment, if there's bonding. But today, the first question is really, one, is this a space that you think the RDA should occupy, yes or no? And then the second question is, if the answer is yes, how would you like us to occupy the space?
And to get to my point, you got $150,000. Here's a $5,000 option consideration. I got a 5-year term. Rent's gonna be $2,500 a month. When I exercise, you're only out $5 grand, and then you're finding the tenant. So you're not losing money every month that it takes you to find the tenant.
More of a matchmaking service.
Yeah, and for the owner, it's like, I got $5,000 no matter what. If I find a tenant, then I get rent.
I definitely think Mike Van Houten is, for the record, it's in the space of the RDA to do a program like this. I couldn't find another RDA that did not have some kind of a program like this. I know in Boise, they were very aggressive about actually buying buildings, but I don't know how we would even have the budget to do that for years and years and years, right? With our property tax structure. So
You'd need to bond.
yeah.
That would be, you'd need to bond to do it.
And I know that the RDA board is basically no on bonding right out the, at least, so if history says anything, that's what their approach is going to be. So I like the lease. I like option 1.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'd say we recommend option 1 with the addition of what member Pawnee said. What was it, a lease option? Yeah, with the lease option added to that as well. And then, start thinking about how they're going to find money for tenant improvements. Because I think this program should have been happening 20 years ago, but of course we didn't have an RDA 20 years ago. So.
Okay,
I would second.
Is that motion clear? Okay. Seconded by Vice Chair Robertson. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Okay, recommendation is on the books. Okay,
Apologize, I gotta run out.
okay, understood. Thanks for sticking around.
You guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 2 informational items left.
Find out.
So first is B4, which is a presentation and discussion on Park District Service Plan with Pros Consulting. This is a discussion item. Let's move into this real quick. I believe our consultant has left.
So updates for the board, Ashley Turney, Assistant City Manager. The consultant was unable to stay, and then the park staff also was unable to stay past 1 p.m. And so some updates that I can provide you are that the pros plan is moving forward. They've been doing lots of outreach to various boards in the community and surveys and researches. All of the memos that have been sent to boards in the body have been included in your packet. Staff recommended kind of 2 paths. We can either bring this item back at a future date. Second to that is we can also bring back to the RAB when they have the models identified. So you may recall this was a requested item from Vice Chair Robertson. For those who aren't aware, the city is engaged in a PROS master plan, which is identifying the future of parks in the city of Reno. And through this process, they're identifying different models for future sustainability. Step 1A, I believe, of the PROS plan was recommending looking into a parks plan. And so this is a different funding model that's identified of if there are benefits and efficiencies from a consolidation model, identifying different tax models that are currently available or would require voter changes. And so those are currently being evaluated and researched. So that is my very high level.
Okay.
If I got anything wrong, I feel like there are people in the room who could tell me what I got wrong. Is it mostly right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I'd add, if I could.
Yes, please do.
Karen Mullen, they did extensive voter or survey work of voters, et cetera. And it came out really positive that the community really is behind finding a sustainable source to make or to continue our park systems, both the operations and maintenance, and as well as providing the Truckee River corridor and some of our other trails and open spaces and parks in the community, and being able to move forward with additional facilities as the community grows. So it was strongly recognized that the community needs to do something to manage both the existing deficit in operations and maintenance, as well as what do we do as the community grows. And just from a business side, they also understand the economic benefit of parks to the community. So there was a huge kind of understanding of that. I don't know if you have anything else, Alicia.
For the record, Alicia Ravon. So the next steps are to work on the options and to do the sort of in-depth financial analysis.
Okay.
So that's
You're getting into
or
the
lack
nuts and bolts, or lack thereof. Mhm.
Colin Robinson, for the record, I would like to request this comes back once we have more information, because the reason I had asked for it on the agenda of a future meeting in the first place was for us to see the places in which investments made by this board through, or prospective investments made by this board through the tools that we have to use, could be seen in an overlaid with investments in parks, trails, open space, and other kinds of entities that are related to the outdoor quality of this place. That's a very key indicator, quality of life indicator for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those two things are parallel. They overlap a lot, but they are parallel, but they're not necessarily the same. And there's a great deal of investment needed because the community has grown and the parks score for our community has gone down as there hasn't been increased investment in those pieces of infrastructure.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
It's in, as Colin, there hasn't been that investment. The last investment was 1990.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
it
been
shows.
a long time.
It does show. I'll say it's terrible. Yeah.
We're here to help work with the various entities and to work with the pros consulting firm to kind of bring some options forward.
Great. Thank you for being here.
And so, Mr. Chair, based off that, staff understands direction, and so we will continue to work with the City of Reno Park staff as they're working with PROS team and everyone else involved. Once we have the models that have been mapped out, so we understanding what the funding mechanisms are, what the constraints within the law, we'll bring back forward that item to this board. So then from the RDA investment, you can understand where it helps, hurts, hinders, or aligns.
Thanks.
Very good. Okay, B6 is a presentation discussion on the agency's fiscal year 26 quarterly update and key initiatives. And again, we have this information in our packet. If anybody has any questions for staff or wants to hear any update on that. Okay, if anything comes up, we can discuss it. Any partner agency or stakeholder updates?
No one is with us today.
Any board member, committee member reports or announcements?
I just wanted, Colin Robertson for the record. I mentioned a couple meetings ago, a speaker coming to the Nevada Museum of Art last Thursday. Named Michael Geppel, who runs a landscape architecture firm called Land Lab, but he's also the director of research for the Portland Botanical Gardens. And wanted just to acknowledge Member Oliverio for attending that. A really interesting presentation, what he has begun doing in support, well, Portland Botanical Garden is trying to acquire a Superfund site and essentially rehabilitate it as public open space and park that is not like a poisonous. And the description of his work and that effort is really quite interesting in the context of stuff that we have about here, both in the purview of this board and then the purview of the prospect of a parks district and so forth. So anyway, thank you for coming.
You bet. It was great.
Very good. Any future agenda items from board? Okay, we got a
We'll keep it.
perfectly okay. We got a full plate. Any public comment before we close?
Yeah.
Arthur, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank
Yes.
you. I just want to go back to the application by the Red for tax increment. When I said it's a catalyst project, it's kind of talking generically, not as it's defined in the packet. The project has been there for some time. I was blown away by the concept that maybe the existing improvements could be considered as part of part of the package. I mean, I don't know if Ashley, maybe you can correct me from this. I don't know of a redevelopment agency in the country that would provide for existing elements of the project to be considered this way. And I think it's a dangerous precedence for the redevelopment agency of Reno to consider something like that. But let me give you an example. As you know, the Montage was developed from a casino to condos. That improvement generated quite a bit of, I don't know how much tax increment, but it generated quite a bit. Also, we have spent or will have spent almost $22 million in construction defect improvements, which also should be captured as tax increment. So if this is allowed, as you know, we have a lot of commercial space downstairs that the owner just can't seem to find the financing. If this is allowed, I would encourage her to come to the agency, put in an application, and utilize the increment already generated by the conversion from a casino to condos as part of the consideration. Just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anything else? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Nettie Oliverio.
Second, Jay Cannon.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we off?